Welcome everyone. Just as a quick introduction, my name is Shawn Powrie. I've been working at eWeb for a little while, about 2 years now. I'm responsible for the SEO product development, which in a nutshell means it's my job to make sure that our SEO offering is unique and valuable and something special that is appealing to everyone, and it's my job to keep up with the trends of what's going on in SEO. So I'm really excited to be here with you, really excited to present this to you. I've spent quite a lot of time on this presentation. And just as an introduction, people like me like to say that almost everything online relates back to SEO. So here's a kind of a general picture, if my whiteboard marker will work. Here's a general picture of, say, all of online marketing, all of the possible things you could do while you're doing online marketing. And some subset of that has an SEO influence. So either it's direct, so you do something and it can directly affect the way you rank in Google, or it's indirect, so you do something and a knock-on effect of that may be a direct effect, which would make you rank better. So if this is all of SEO over here, I've tried to cut this into 3 segments. And this first segment over here is what we're going to be talking about today. So I've taken a lot of knowledge, a lot of information about SEO and condensed it down to the most important, most effective tips. I wouldn't call them tricks, because if you call them tricks, that's when Google starts to not like you. So tips and advice that can help you. And I'll get started. I'll give you a little bit of an introduction to the format of today. So I'm going to start off with information that can help to put our minds in the right mind frame to talk about SEO. So unlike analytics, which is a tool that you use to understand your site, SEO is a lot more squishy, a lot less solid in terms of shape than something like analytics is. So I have to spend some time getting our minds into the right frame in order to understand SEO. So that's why the first part I have here is about demystifying SEO, just getting a picture of what SEO is and trying to get rid of some misunderstandings. Then the other section related to that is fundamental paradigms of modern SEO. So Sam mentioned SEO has evolved over a long time. I have a timeline in this presentation that shows its evolution. And what I'm going to try to do is show you how, although SEO has evolved a lot, the principles behind SEO have never changed. In fact, Google's goal, the main objective of Google has never changed. All they're trying to do is do that better every time. So I'll talk a bit about that. Then we'll talk about how Google works. Don't worry, this is a lightweight technical explanation of how Google actually goes and understands the internet. And then we'll have a short break between this as we change gears to more tips and advice and suggestions. So is that clear? Everyone on board? Okay. So let's start off with some ideas of how to demystify what SEO is. It really starts out, it starts off by us understanding what the difference between inbound and outbound marketing is. So how many of you have heard these terms, inbound, outbound marketing? Okay, good. So I'm going to briefly explain what the distinction between inbound and outbound is. Inbound is when you're finding people when they're actively looking for you or something like you. So there's a person, and for whatever reason you understand this person is actively seeking you out. Outbound is when you capture peripheral attention. So when someone is focusing on something and you are in a sense distracting them by putting an ad, for example. So a good example of outbound is a train station ad. You're standing there, you're waiting for the train, and there's a big banner in front of you that captures your attention. Now the problem with outbound is that the relevancy factor is very low. So you're actually waiting for a train and there's a big ad there that says, go to Sydney Uni and get the MBA that you've always wanted. So you may not necessarily be in the market to get an MBA. Only a small fraction of the people who are in the train station are in that market. However, with inbound, we know that these people are actively looking for MBAs, as an example. So what we want to do is put ourselves in front of them when they've declared that they have an interest in something, that they're actively seeking something. So inbound can be more powerful due to the higher relevancy factor that I mentioned. You know people for sure are looking for your service. However, outbound still has a place. So there are some infographics online and they'll say, you know, outbound is dead, whatever, but that's not necessarily true either. Outbound marketing has its place, it's just that it fits different business models more effectively. Does that make sense? So let me give an example of where outbound would be a good idea. Imagine I'm producing a brand new product that the world has never heard of before. I'm producing the new iPhone. Well, no one's going to be on Google searching for the new iPhone necessarily. People don't even know my product exists, so it's unlikely that they'll be searching for it. That's where outbound has more of a place. That's where you try to target people who are within your demographic and you try to serve them ads to get them interested. But for most, I think most of the people in this room, you're not developing the new iPhone just yet, right? Yeah, I'm not developing it either, so that's why I like inbound, because most people know about our services and they actively search for them in search engines. So here's a very simple explanation of SEO. Someone goes to Google and they reveal intent through a search term. They type something out, and when they do a search, that shows that they have a certain intent. Google returns results, and Google is trying to satisfy that intent with their results. And I want Google to return my website so that I can satisfy that intent. So someone may search for an SEO provider, for instance. Their intent is quite clear. They're looking for someone to help them with SEO. Someone like me wants to be up there so that they can get through to me. SEO and PPC are pretty much the de facto forms of inbound marketing. They're the two main forms that we talk about. Does that make sense? Yeah, very light introduction. Okay, this is called a SERP. So this is the term for when you type a search in and you're served a page. We call it a SERP, Search Engine Results Page. This area here is Google CPC advertising. These people pay if you click on that ad, and they pay, Sam was just describing before, that those costs are going up, right? But everything under here is called Google Organic Results. So SEO tries to get us as high as possible in here. And these clicks are free to your website. That's why SEO is so attractive. Getting free, relevant, interested traffic to your site. That's great, right? How is SEO different from PPC? I'm just trying to give context. So with PPC, you pay whenever you get a click-through, and with SEO, you work to get to the top. With PPC, every time someone searches for something, these ads will actually rotate. So even if you see an ad at the top here now, and your friend searches for it, that ad may not even be here, right? With SEO, the rankings are changing all the time, but they don't fluctuate as much as PPC does, if that makes sense. Here's an analogy I like to use to set expectations and help people understand them. So SEO is like building a stream to capture water, where PPC is like turning on a tap. So the moment you pay, you turn on the tap, you get relevant traffic. But the moment you stop paying, the tap turns off because Google owns that audience. But when you're doing SEO, you are trying to own the audience, in a sense. Instead of renting your audience, you're trying to buy them. So you're trying to build a stream that can give you a constant flow of relevant visitors to your site. Does that all make sense? Yeah, okay. Right. It's my job to sell you that SEO is amazing, right? So I love SEO. SEO is great. Here are some basic statistics I pulled together. The search engine industry is worth over 16 billion worldwide. So I have references at the end. There was a study done recently where, and this is I think 2015 or late 2014, so still very relevant, where they showed that organic search still drives 51% of traffic to businesses. So websites, although they have multiple channels, they have social media, PPC, all different types of channels, still organic search drives more than half of the traffic to those sites. And over 40% of the revenue to them, according to that study. In eWeb, obviously, we have seen great results through SEO, or else we wouldn't be here talking about it still. So we love SEO. We've seen spectacular results when it's done properly. And obviously, I'm a huge SEO geek. So if you have any questions and if there's anything unclear in the presentation or afterwards, just come and ask me and I'll explain it to you as best I can. Okay. Google is smarter than ever at intent. So I don't know if you guys remember, but in the first mentoring session, Sam said the sentence, you can rank now for keywords that are not even on your page. Do you guys remember him saying that? Yeah. Someone on our social media group on Facebook asked, hey, what does he mean by that? Does that mean he's spamming Google and making him rank for keywords that don't exist on the page or something like that? And here's the answer. What actually is happening is Google is trying to understand your intent. They've gone from, they call it from strings to things. They've gone from understanding the keywords that you're writing to actually trying to understand what you mean by those keywords. So here are two examples that are really good. The first one is, imagine you search, and you can actually go do these searches yourself. Visual search engine for designers. The result that ranks first says, a search engine with taste. Nice. So this has the word search engine in it, but it doesn't have the word visual or designers. But the point is that Google actually understood what the search means, and it returned the result that was the most relevant, even though the keywords weren't exactly matching with the search. Here's another one that I find that's perhaps even stronger. The other day I was sitting working randomly, and I remembered a movie I watched as a kid, which was, all I remember was a green thumb. That's all I remember. So I went to Google and I searched kids movie green thumb. And the first result was a troll in Central Park. I don't know if you guys have heard of this. This is a kids movie. Have any of you heard of this movie? No. So it means nothing to any of you. Okay. Bad example. But the point is that the only clue I gave Google was it's a kids movie and it has a green thumb. That's a very, very obscure hint. But the result it returned was spot on. Now, if I had picked up the phone and called my mom and said, Mom, I remember when I was a kid, I watched a movie. All I remember is a green thumb. What is that movie? It's likely, even though she was there with me watching it, she wouldn't be able to guess that result. So this is an example of how Google really understands what I'm talking about.
Let me just ask you all a question. How many of you all are concerned about your ranking on Google?
Everybody.
This is exactly what's been created by providers, like people who provide SEO services. For the last 5 years, businesses have been sold that, listen, you need to be ranking really high for the keyword that you want to, be visible for. So I'm pretty sure even now you guys get phone calls from SEO agencies saying that you're not on the first page of Google, you're not number one for what you do, and we'll help you get it done. So we've kind of gone into that mindset of thinking that, okay, for me to be successful, okay, I have to be on the first page of Google. Now, and this is quite funny because there are at least, of all the people on the first page of Google, it's only 20% of them who actually make money. So we all are focusing on an objective, which is not the end result. Okay? There are so many businesses which are actually in the first page of Google, they're not making money. And this is where Google has realized today, is that it's even if Google sends someone to a specific website, if the customer engagement is not right, it's actually affecting Google. So over a period of time, Google has changed the factors that they look at. So I'm not saying that you should not have that ambition of saying that, listen, I have to be on the first page of Google. But you got to understand that end of the day, it's not Google is going to buy from you. It's the consumers. So don't focus purely on Google, even though we say it's important. Focus on, what would a customer want? Because you could spend a lot of effort, trying to be on the first page of Google. Okay. If you don't have what it takes to get the actual sale, it's not going to happen. I get a lot of people, because I do a lot of talks at various events, I get people coming to me and saying, my business is struggling and I'm not on the first page of Google. Okay, so what can I do to be on the first page of Google? So I asked them to say, I actually tell them, let's do an exercise. Let's just assume that you're on the first page of Google. Then the next step is, are you going to really convert? Do you have what it takes for someone to say yes to you? Mm-hmm. And most of the time, it doesn't work. So you can spend months or you can spend thousands of dollars trying to be right out here. But have you actually understood what your consumers want? I think that's very critical for SEO today. So in the last 15 years when Google has been around, Google started off with one intent of saying that if someone goes onto the internet to search for something, we want to give them results. So when Google initially started, it was purely meant for uni students. When they did research, They can go online and they can search for information. 15 years down the track, Google says our mission is still the same. The only thing now is that we've got so much of knowledge about what you will be looking out for, and our focus is to make sure that you can actually get results without even typing what you want on Google. That's the intention they're going to. I mean, there's talks about Google Talk, or you can speak to Google. That's what the intention is, that you just go and say, okay, you know who's in front of the computer? What are you going to ask? You're going to get the answer. That's all they're doing. So apart from focusing on that goal, you also need to focus on have you done the right kind of things. So most businesses today, what they do is when they look at SEO, even like customers, when they come to us, they ask questions which kind of we think, do we want this customer? Do you really want this customer or not? Because their mindset is totally different. For the last 3-4 years, all they've been hearing is, I need to be number one on Google. I need to rank high for this keyword. And if I do that, I'm going to be successful. It doesn't happen that way. So I think it's really important to understand that with what Shawn is trying to address today is you've got to fix your fundamental things.
Yeah.
Okay. What happens on top is only fine-tuning that Google does.
Yeah. I'm actually about to repeat almost all of that in the presentation.
Sorry, Shawn.
Just one question. With search, with getting on the front page, as I understand it, if you've got two computers next to each other, then the two computers are going to show something different.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to explain that.
What is all that?
Yeah, I'm going to explain that. So when you log into your browser, most of us use Google Chrome, right? I think most of us, because it's the nicest. There's a reason Google developed Chrome, by the way, and that's because they wanted everyone to log in so that they could do exactly this. So when you log into Google Chrome, it gives you personalized results. So let's say, for example, I like eWeb Marketing, our website. And so I've done a couple of searches, and I've clicked eWeb Marketing quite a few times. Google says, oh, Shawn really likes eWeb Marketing. Next time he does a search, we'll bump it up a little bit. So that's what they can do. And so sometimes you'll look at the way you rank, you're like, oh, we're ranking really well, But actually someone does a search around the corner and you're not as visible. So there are certain ways to remove as much bias as possible. So you can go to google.com.au, you can go into incognito mode, so that's getting out of personalized search, and you can set your location to just Australia generally. So there are a couple of things, location and personalized search, those are the two major factors. So set your location as Australia, go into incognito to escape personal bias, and then you'll get more generic rankings. Yeah. Does that help? Yeah. Yeah. Good question. Okay. So I've put this here as a slide. So the next section is going to be speaking about the paradigms. That's exactly what Sam just intimated. So when you approach SEO, some people will come in and say, oh, I just want to rank first on Google, as Sam said. And it's important to approach SEO with the right mindset, because if you do, you can win a lot in the long term. And that's what I'm going to speak about here. So has anyone ever heard horror stories about SEO? Yeah? Anyone? You have?
Absolutely.
What horror stories have you heard? Can you tell us briefly?
Well, specifically with the Panda update, when people's websites just disappeared overnight.
Yep.
So, I mean, that was a big one. Oh, and same with Penguin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That can happen.
So just websites that weren't necessarily built for the reader, and they just got smashed.
That's right. So there's an array of animals in the Google kingdom. These are two of them, Panda and Penguin. I tried to find the scariest photos I could find so that I can set the tone. But Panda is an algorithm that's focused on page, and Penguin is focused on off-page, and they focus on spam. So spam is when you do something and you target the Google algorithm only without benefiting the user. That's what Google hates, because in that sense you're manipulating them. So I'm going to speak a bit about that, but there are horror stories in SEO, and that's why some people, I could give this presentation and you could just Shawn, just tell me how to rank first. And the first thing I have to tell you is why you have to think about it in the correct way. Because if I just tell you what you have to do to rank first, in a year's time you could disappear entirely. So that's why I try to set that tone. So if done incorrectly, SEO is kind of like steroids, right? You can build great muscles in a very short time, but too bad about your long-term health. So it can really be like that, and we've seen examples. We have some sales leads who come in here who say, I'm gone completely, right? I've lost all my rankings, can you help me? And then we can take them on board, and it's a long process. You actually have to submit to Google to reconsider their website, and it takes a lot of work. So it's best to just avoid this entirely, not even go down that avenue in the first place. So let's talk about what Google wants and what Google is trying to achieve in its own existence. Google's mission statement, which Sam mentioned briefly earlier, is to make the world, the information in the world, universally accessible and useful. If you go Google it, Google mission statement, you'll read that statement. There's an article online, I don't know who wrote it. It's called The Heart of SEO. If you go Google it, you can find it. Some random SEO guy wrote that. And it's all about the following discussion. How can we leverage Google instead of manipulating Google? So we all know the difference between these two words, but I want to do an illustration. You do web design, right? He does web design, I do SEO. If I want to leverage him, I could say, hey, why don't we form a partnership? I'll give you web design referrals, and if you feel my work is high quality, if you feel it's appropriate, you can refer people to me as well. That's leveraging. We're working together. Manipulating is, give me all your money. Give me all of your referrals, give me all of your clients. Can I see a client list? There's the difference. And if you approach Google with this attitude, working together with Google to achieve a common goal, then Google will like you and rank you higher. So what is that goal then? This is a slide about the evolution of SEO, but again, I'm just going to what is the goal. I'm going to talk about two things. One, relevance, and two, quality. Google says a lot of stuff, but if you really break it down, it boils down to these two things. When you go and do a search for, say, whiteboard markers online, Google wants to rank the sites according to these two factors. The most relevant one and the highest quality goes up to spot number one. And then as you go down, those two decrease. Yeah?
Will that be relevance according to your preferences? Is it customized?
Yes, it is, yeah. But mainly it's about the keyword. So, for example, if I search for car hire Sydney and a website rank that says car hire Perth, then obviously that's not relevant and I won't be a happy searcher. So, but yes, there is a certain factor of personalized search. Sometimes even now, if you do a search and you have friends on Google+, you can see their Google+ posts ranking in organic search when they've spoken about what you are searching for. Yeah. So relevance and quality, that's their goal. They just want the most relevant and the highest quality result to be at the top. And that's a fundamental clue as to how you can be on the top of Google. I just want to drive this point. So this is clear. But on the outside, I have two circles here. This is the what Google is trying to achieve, and the outside is the how. So the way Google currently works in achieving returning the best and most appropriate result is through things like domain level link metrics, page level link metrics, page level keywords, brand metrics, domain level keyword usage, user behavior on site, page level content, a whole bunch of things that they look at. And so when people say SEO is constantly changing, they're actually talking about this outer layer here, but not the inner layer. The inner layer is the core of Google's purpose. It's never changed. The outer layer improves as Google improves, as they get better at what they do. Does that make sense? Yeah. So my warning is try not to focus obsessively on that, because that's going to keep changing. Try focus on this. So here's the heart of SEO is to focus on the what. Focus on being the most relevant and the highest quality result and market that extremely well on your website while maintaining a general awareness of the how, of how Google works, and do it in a way that's appealing to search engines, right? So going to this center here, and I really have to drive this forward, there's a video by Miley O'Hay. She's one of the top Google product developers. And she has a video on YouTube, you can search for it. She says the top 5 SEO mistakes. And her first mistake is no value proposition. In other words, I haven't answered the question, why would a user select my site in search results over my competitors? If you haven't answered that question, why would you select my site? It doesn't even matter if you rank on the first page, because people will still click your competitors because you don't stand out as opposed to them. So make your product or service compelling and be your creative self. So when people come to me nowadays and they ask, how can I outrank my competitors? How can I rank above them? The first thing I'll say is, the step in outranking your competitors is be genuinely better and more compelling than they are. And clearly market the why on your website. Then in the long term, no matter how Google changes, it will always want to rank you highly because you stand out in that special way. But this is quite a hard bullet to bite. This is a little bit harsh that we have to stand out as much. But that is the reality. That is how Google works. And so I'm actually doing you kind of a service by explaining it in this way. It may sound a little bit hard, but that's really the reality. Okay? Yeah, I got this beautiful picture of a nebula because the first part of the presentation you may feel is very nebulous. Like we've just been talking about abstract concepts, how to be better than everyone else, that kind of stuff. And now we're actually going to drill down and get down to earth very quickly with more of the tactics that we've been speaking about. So I have a unique challenge giving this presentation because I have to try to condense a lot of stuff into some actionable steps for you guys. So there's a lot to SEO. As Matt Cutts pointed out, they have over 200 ranking factors and their algorithm is very complex. So how do you build your site in such a way that you can cater for all of that? That's my challenge. So I'm going to give you some kind of from experience, some of the things that have the highest impact or some of the biggest mistakes that people make that you can fix from the outset, okay? So this is just to visualize where we're going. So as I drew earlier in that picture, SEO in eWeb, we tend to approach it with 3 phases. The first phase is getting the on-page right, which is basically the bottom of your sales funnel, which is making sure your site sells your service well and Google and other search engines understand it well and feel it's attractive. Then the second phase is about content. So a lot of people talk about content. When you hear about SEO, you'll hear this word a lot. We're not going to go too much into that. That's actually next month's presentation is all dedicated to content. And then the third one is about outreach, reaching out to influencers in your area. So we're going to focus on this because if you get these two, if you have great content and great outreach, but you don't get this right, then you still won't make much money or your SEO may not work. So you may be focusing a lot of resources into something, but it actually won't give you a return. Okay. So let's start by talking about robots.txt. Robots.txt is a text file that lives on a lot of websites. It lives always under whatever your website is /robots.txt. There's only one place that it can live and it's there. Robots.txt is a directive to search engines and other bots or spiders about whether or not you want them to access certain pages on your website. So you remember Matt Cutts had the little spider hovering above him, and that spider was visiting web pages and trying to understand the internet. It starts off by going to a web page, and it starts by reading the robots.txt and seeing, do these folks want me to visit? Are they friendly to me? Are they okay with me visiting? If you have, this is the biggest technical SEO mistake. Biggest. You want to rank in Google, but you won't let Google access your site. Very, very big mistake. And it's funny, but it happens a lot. So if you have a robots.txt and it has a statement like this, user-agent * disallow /. What that means is it's telling Google, you're not allowed to access my website. Yeah?
What if it's when I put it into mine, it just says, whoops, our bad, hide your request.
So you don't have a robots.txt. That's better than having one like that. Rather have none at all than have one that blocks. I can help you to make one afterwards, but you could create a robots.txt that just says that, user-agent * allow. So just to confirm to robots that they can crawl. And the next one that I have is actually sitemap, which is like an index. Yeah. So robots, it tells them whether or not they can. So this is an example of a robots, mine from my website. It's a bit fancy. All I've blocked is a few things, but for the most part, it's best to just have an allow all if you don't want to go to an advanced robots. All right, the sitemap is kind of what Sam was referring to. So sitemap.xml is a file, again, on a website. It's usually found on your website /sitemap.xml. And what it does is it gives a map of your website to Google that they can understand. So I want to say that you don't have to understand how this file actually works. What most modern CMSs, WordPress and Magento definitely, is very easy to get a sitemap up and running, but you just need a plugin. So either here, WordPress SEO by Yoast, which is the plugin I just mentioned, that will create your robots and your sitemap for you. Magento has out-of-the-box functionality. If you don't have a sitemap live, there's an option. You can just, I think it's very simple. It's in the preferences. You can just say, yeah, generate a sitemap, and it'll create one. And other modern CMSs, if it's a half-decent CMS that you're using, it will generate a sitemap automatically or have the option very easily accessible. If you are in the case where you have to generate one manually, there are tools online that you can use. Just go Google sitemap generator. It will crawl your site and make one.
So just remind me what's this for though? Like what's the sitemap? Like that's just to allow them to find all the different parts of your...
Correct. So this is like a map, just like Sam's analogy with a book. So Google is coming to your site, it wants to crawl it and understand it, and we're giving it a map to work off. And the thing is, there's a little bit about Webmaster Tools later, but you can submit your sitemap to Webmaster Tools and Google will actually tell you how much of your site they've indexed. They'll give you a number of URLs that they've indexed. Yeah. An important point about sitemaps, make sure they're dynamically updated. That's why I suggest using a plugin or something else, because you're going to be moving pages around on your website, changing content, redirecting stuff, and the sitemap will continuously update. So whenever Google comes and visits, the sitemap is accurate. Sometimes what happens is people have a sitemap that's out of date. So it shows an older version of the website, and then Google gets a little bit lost on the way. It won't kill your rankings, but in general, the easier you make the journey for Google, the more often it comes and visits, and the better it ranks your site. Keyword research. So we've spoken about this a couple of times today. What are keywords, why they're important, why we shouldn't focus too much on them, and so on. I'm going to speak about how to do keyword research. So it's important to understand how users express their intent in search. That's what we have to keep in the back of our minds, not keywords, but intent. What is someone trying to achieve, and how can I serve that? So that's why I like to call it an intent vertical. That's a phrase I'm trying to coin. If you can help me coin that, that would be great. But inside our office, when we change the way we think about keywords, we're actually using this word to say keywords and intent verticals are different. Many keywords could represent a very similar intent, right? So for example, if I type plumber Sydney or just plumber, my intent is the same, but the keyword is different. And I'll give you some examples after this. So how do you do keyword research? The first thing is write down what you would type into Google to search for your own product or service. If you are searching for yourself, but not your branded term, just a generic, for example, web design, that's a keyword, right? Type that in and see how relevant the results are, right? If you got it right, the results will be very relevant. If you didn't, then try rephrase how you say it. Each discrete phrase, so create discrete phrases that are similar in wording and almost identical intent. So imagine if I said web design, build my website, design my website. Those are three keywords, but the intent behind them is quite similar. If you had your site, you'd want your homepage to rank for all three of those keywords. So it's understanding those phrases, group them into basically groups that represent different intent that you serve. Does that make sense? I'll give you an example afterwards. Each phrase will be mapped to an individual web page or section of your site. We'll get to that when we talk about site structure. The Google Keywords tool can help you understand volume. So volume is still important, right? So you don't want to have keywords that have absolutely no volume to them, but it's important to understand relevancy. So we had an example with a client not long ago. They sell maternity, I think it was maternity nursing bras, but there was a keyword, maternity clothes, that had a lot more volume. So when we were looking at the keywords, I said, is your product general enough to talk about maternity clothes? And the answer is no, because they only sell one subset of maternity clothes. So there's no point their website tries to rank for maternity clothes. They're not relevant enough to it. They're not broad enough. What they should target is nursing bras, for example.
I would have thought that nearly every woman that searches maternity sites would be also looking for maternity. Just quietly.
Yeah, yes, that's absolutely true.
Like from a practical point of view, I've searched on those websites when I was pregnant. And
Yeah.
So from a reality, I think that's actually wrong.
No, so I'll explain. It's great that you challenged it. So the point is that if I try to rank for maternity clothes, but the only thing I sell is bras, then what about sleepwear? What about underwear? What about all the other subsets of maternity clothes that I don't sell? I'm not relevant to those. Does that make sense?
I think just to clarify that, it's like if you're a user and you're looking out for maternity wear, you go to a website, you only get one item.
Yeah, you might be
So-
frustrated.
You're
Yeah.
just going to say, listen, you know what, I need a lot of things.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
no
Yeah.
point paying shipping for this one, then going to another
I'm
website.
trying to fit out my whole wardrobe with maternity clothes, but you're only serving me bras. The other thing is Google understands that. So if you build a website and you only sell, I mean, just using this analogy, you only sell bras, but you're trying to rank for clothes, then you write the word clothes and you do all your SEO for clothes, but you still won't rank for clothes. Because Google reads your whole site and it's like, well, you don't sell clothes, you just sell that subset of clothes. Yeah. Okay. So that's the pinch of salt that should be added to keyword volume, is understanding relevancy yourself. Okay. There are 3 types of intents that people express into search engines. The first is they want to know something, so it's informational. For example, how fast does a cheetah run was the Mad Catz example. Which is better, iOS or Android? And funny cat videos. You're not looking to buy something, you're looking to know something or be entertained. That's general content, informational. The one that we all care about as business owners is transactional. When someone types something into Google and they're looking to buy, for example, car hire Sydney, or wedding photography, or removal lists or something. So it's important to understand when you do keyword research which keywords are biased towards informational results and which are biased towards transaction. If you're building your website and selling your business, target these, because that's what you're doing, right? No?
No, for me it's informational. If transaction is not my objective, I want to be informational because my clients don't buy from my website. They would like, I want them to know that I can provide what they want just by being informational.
Yeah.
So
That's when content marketing comes into play. So you know the funnel I showed a little bit earlier? Here. What we're talking about is the green section, which is generally selling your service, transaction. It's important to get that right. Once you have that right, you move up the funnel to expand your reach, and you do that by offering information. So you're absolutely right. But when you're doing keyword research, it's important to understand which are the money terms that will actually drive business to your site. But if you're in the business of selling information, then it's different, right? So if I have an SEO blog and I have ads on my blog and that's how I monetize my audience, then I want to rank for informational queries. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah. That kind of resolves that dispute. Okay. And then navigational. So for example, if you type in eWeb marketing and eBay, those are navigational queries. You're actually looking for a particular website. You're Googling that website. So here's an example. I'll actually just skip ahead to, so ignore this picture here for now. Here's an example of keyword research that I did for eWeb marketing. So I looked into the Google AdWords tool, and I found that people online are searching for the following terms: online marketing, digital agency, internet marketing company, digital marketing agency, digital marketing consultants, digital agencies, digital marketing company, digital marketing consultant, digital marketing services, online marketing company, digital marketing agencies. So this is a lot of keywords, right? But the intent behind them is very similar. All of those keywords, they have very similar intent. So we have a homepage in eWeb marketing, and the title tag, which I'll speak about a little bit later, says Holistic Digital Marketing Agency. And that that is how I've served that audience. So anyone who's searching for any of these, I'm hoping that that page will rank because it serves that intent, right? So when you do your keyword research, I'm going to relate it back to site structure now. The purpose of keyword research is ultimately to structure your site in such a way that you target searches with different intents. So what I've shown here is the homepage. There was that subset of keywords, right? All these digital keywords. And I've just created the title, which is Holistic Digital Marketing Agency. So the way you usually approach your keyword research is your homepage targets your main terms, which are your main transactional terms. For us, it's those. And then underneath that, you would build web pages that target smaller subsets of keywords. So for example, someone searching for SEO would be relevant to us, but we're a complete digital agency. We offer the whole picture of digital. So SEO isn't our homepage target, it's actually our sub-page target. Does that make sense? And then another one would be PPC. And then another one would be social media. We'd probably call it social media agency to show that transactional value. And then another one could be, whatever. Conversion rate optimization, right? Increasing conversion of websites. So I've structured our website according to the intents. The biggest intent with the highest search volume, which is spread in a kind of distribution among all of these keywords, is targeted by the homepage. And then underneath that, we have another tier of pages. One targets SEO, one targets PPC, social media, and each of these has variants as well. So someone will search SEO, search engine optimization, search engine optimization agency, SEO consultant. There are so many various ways of searching for something, but the intent is the same. And when you're doing SEO, you actually are lucky because you don't have to do as much work as when you do PPC. When you do PPC in keyword research, you have to be more exhaustive. When you do SEO, so long as you've gathered a couple and you know there's search volume, you can assume related terms will come back to this page, if that makes sense. Okay, any questions about that? I'm going to re-explain it a little bit, but any questions about site structure and keywords? All right, let's do a simple example. So, 2-minute truck, your removalists. Do you do international removal? No. Okay. Do you do local?
Local.
And interstate?
Interstate.
Yeah. So as an example, this is one potential way you could structure your site, which of course Has9 takes care of all of that, right? So homepage is about removalists. One of the sub-pages is about interstate removalists. And it's targeted at people who are specifically trying to travel interstate. So that's a potential. Now when it comes to site structure and SEO, there's no 100% right and 100% wrong way. There are just more effective and less effective ways. So it's more effective to structure your website around keywords and those verticals, intent verticals. Another old school tactic is, you see this list here? Online marketing, digital agency, online marketing company. Another old school tactic is I'll create a web page for every single one of those keywords. So my one web page says online marketing, my other web page says digital agency, and I just have separate web pages for every little variant of the keyword. Now that doesn't work anymore because Google reads that and it says, look, these are too similar. They're way too similar. So it says, this is all spammy and doesn't like it. So if you have a site that is similar to that, then you can, because that's a kind of old tactic, you can consolidate those web pages into one web page that satisfies that intent. And we've seen good results with that. So we'll have a client, they have a setup like that, and we feel that the overlap between these pages is too high. So we'll take a set and we'll say these are all similar. We'll build a nice new landing page for that key phrase or that intent vertical. We'll redirect all of those other pages to that one, and then that page starts to rank better in all of their phrases. So that's an example. We've had good success with that. Okay, now we're going to talk about URLs. So everyone knows firstly what a URL is, right? Yeah. So URLs are when you have a browser, this long thing in the top here is the URL. Now, Google uses URLs to extract information about web pages. It uses URLs to understand them. When you structure your site, it's important to structure the URLs in such a way that they contain those words or phrases in a natural, understandable way. So I have a little exercise for us. Here's a real URL that I picked up, and I'm not going to give you any other information. What do you think this web page is about? If this is all I gave you and I ask you, what is that web page about, what would you say?
Celebrity.
Yeah, right. Vogue's 73 question series takes you inside celebrity homes. Okay, so this URL is a Sydney Morning Herald URL, and you can see that it has good structure. It has sydneymorningherald.com.au/lifestyle. So we're in a category of content that's about lifestyle. Underneath that, we have home style, which is a category of lifestyle that's about homes. And we have content that's about celebrity homes. The only part that I'd say is not necessarily good about this URL is probably this part here, because it doesn't really mean anything. This is the date over here. So they've encoded a lot of information in this URL. This is a pretty good URL. So I'm going to go to a page. Right. Ethos. That's a page of the site. Okay. So the question I'd have, for example, is, would someone Google that? Behind closed doors. It's the blog name, right? Good. So if I gave this URL to Google, they might struggle to understand what you mean by behind closed doors. Because if someone Googled that, what intent would they have behind that search? It's hard to tell. Yeah. So a better URL would just be blog. And you can still spice it up on the page and make it, nice and fancy. This is a creative side, right? You've called it that out of a creative name. There's nothing wrong with creative. But when you have SEO, when you're thinking about URLs, titles, and so on, it's better to have them very clear in what they are. And then the creative stuff can be worked into the page itself. Does that make sense? Shop, yeah. Okay, is this Magento? It is Magento, yeah. Good example. So Magento out of the box is not necessarily friendly with the URLs. So catalog, product, view, ID 124. This is probably all the information that I have. It's probably the only useful SEO part of the URL, right? So if Google,
They've set that up incorrectly.
it's not incorrect. It's just not SEO friendly, if that makes sense. Like, it's done by your developers, right? Generally, developers don't think about SEO when they build websites.
Okay.
So here's the ideal way to structure your URLs in categories. So here's, for example, our homepage, which is just slash, because it's whatever mysite.com. Underneath this, I could have SEO, PPC, / social media. And whenever you do a multiple word URL, so it has more than one word, use a dash between them. Social - media / and then, for example, this we call CRO, so I'll just do CRO. And those are very well tiered URLs, very well structured. And then I might have a page underneath this. Somebody asked earlier about local SEO. So I might have a page underneath this SEO / local. And that web page is about local SEO. The URL tells the whole story. There's a category about SEO, there's a page about local SEO. Makes a lot of sense, right? So this is how you structure URLs. Category, subcategory, child page. And some websites that we've architected in eWeb have been highly complex. They have very, very complex product categories. And this has gone down to, say, about 4. So you have 1, sorry, that's supposed to be a slash, there's a mistake. 1, 2, 3, 4. But when you get past 4 tiers, you're starting to get into a little bit too much, right? So a website probably, for a simple website, it can just be 2-tier, homepage and a category. But when you get a product catalog, you usually have categories, maybe subcategories, and then products. But if you have too many, it starts to lose value. Yeah.
So the categories are like the drop down where you click on and it has a drop down and it has what's...
Yes. So generally these match the navigation of the website very closely. So you have a website and it has major nav on the top. It has those menu items. You click on one of them, you go into a category. You click on something else on that page, you visit into a subcategory. And the URLs tell Google the whole story of how you structure your site. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Would you use a category for blog, like would you do my site /blog?
Yeah. If you have a blog, I always suggest just /blog. Very clear. Yeah. And then if you have a more comprehensive content strategy, your blog would have categories itself. So let's say I'm an SEO person and I blog about SEO. I would have /blog and then /, for example, let's say I blog about a bunch of online things. /blog /SEO. That's a category of my blog. /CRO, which is conversion rate optimization. That's a category of my blog. I don't know, what are the other things? Social media or whatever. Yeah, so structure your blog as well. So it makes a lot of sense. Okay, good. Any questions about that? Good.
So if anyone wants to see how the 2 man and truck website's been done like that, if one wants an example, you can go through and have a look. It's actually, that one's pretty well structured.
Yeah, good job to Hasnain.
That's nice. But even like the blog, if you go to our blog, it'll say blog / March 2015, then / the heading.
So you've chosen to structure your URLs by a date, and that's fine. So there are different ways. I mean, this is almost like an engineering exercise. What do you want to give priority to? If you give priority to date, then it means that your content may be more time sensitive, if you want that. But if it's not as time sensitive and you want to give priority to something else, you can structure it accordingly. Yeah. Or it can be, most of the time, date is an acceptable default as well, if you don't have any other structure. Okay, titles. So let's go do a search. Let's do that leather jackets. Yeah? Okay. We're talking about SEO, so I'll scroll past the ads. Do you see how these are the URLs? Actually, if Google understands the structure of your site really well, it'll remove the slashes completely, and it'll give you this. This is called breadcrumbs. If those of you who have e-commerce stores, you probably know about breadcrumbs, right? But for the most part, they still have those URLs, right? A title is this, the blue part. Now, going back to just another WordPress site that was shown earlier, this title not only has a lot of SEO value, but a lot of usability value, because it can be enticing. It can encourage click-through. So, for example, if you look at this title here, I just search for leather jackets. Men's leather jackets, leather coat and biker jacket styles. The only thing that I don't like about this is it's too long because I'm missing something. But in general, that if I'm looking for men's leather jackets, that seems to be relevant, right? So you're telling the story of relevance to your users and to Google. That's what I'm going to talk about in the meta title. So, sorry. Let's actually just go visit this page so I can show you where titles show on the web page. You see if I hover above this, my mouse to the top of the browser, it says women's leather jackets and biker jackets, ASOS. That's their title tag. So when you're on a website, whatever you see up in here in this section, that's the title tag of that page. And that title tag shows up here in search, and it can be defined on your website. So when you're in WordPress, if you have that Yoast SEO plugin, then you can define the title tag underneath your post. You can just type it right out there as you want. If you have Magento, the title tag is generally according to your product. So whatever you've called your product, it defaults the title tag to that. But I think you can modify that as well if you want to tweak it, right?
With WordPress as well, like in the categories, because you can apply categories to it as opposed to actually having it in the URL, can't you?
Yes, but I wouldn't suggest it generally because the URL is a good place to show structure, where title is not as good a place. Like some people do that. If you look at this title here, it actually has two pipes. Sorry, it has a pipe here, right? That's acceptable, but I wouldn't recommend it because it's too long. Going back to that story. So where you encode the structure of your site, the best place to do that is in the URLs. The title should be more like an introduction to this page. And that's why the most common setup is this. Something, and then pipe, this is called a pipe, that bar, and then brand. So here are some examples, right? SEO consulting, e-web marketing. That's a very good title tag. It's short, it's descriptive. You know exactly what that web page is about. It's about SEO consulting.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
I would swap the two around.
Right.
Because from a visual point of view, if I have 12 tabs open on my browser and I want to go back to the e-web marketing tab, I want to be able to see where it is.
So I'll comment on that.
So then wouldn't you have ewebmarketing.com though, you pipe, e-web marketing, pipe, SEO?
No. So I'll comment on that. A couple of things. Firstly, my earlier comment about SEO and effective. So there's not a right and wrong answer. That's one thing I always like to tell people, that there's not a right and wrong answer, but there are certain things that are more effective. Point one about what you said. Google tends to bias towards that by themselves. So these titles you see over here, they are actually modified by Google. Right. So for example, you know this leather jacket dash ASOS? When I visited this page, it turns out the title was actually a lot longer. But what Google did is it cut out a lot of that because it felt, well, there's too much, it's irrelevant. We're going to modify it. So I agree with your point about having the brand first, for the sake that when you do a Google search, it'll actually put your brand first. Google actually defaults that. But the other thing is Google puts more priority or more emphasis on words in the beginning of a title than at the end. And that's why we tend to put the brand at the end.
I was just thinking from a visual
perspective.
point of view.
Yeah.
To find the tab again if I want to go back to a web or ASOS.
So my counter offer, if you will, is the favicon.
Yep.
Because if you have a good favicon that's your logo, for instance, with the E, then it's very clear. But from an SEO perspective, I still suggest this setup because the way Google reads titles is A, if they're too long, it'll condense them, and B, it gives more emphasis to the words in the front than at the back. So that's why we put the keywords in the front and the brand at the back.
Should we focus on location there as well? Like you've got SEO consulting. If you want to be very specific, would you put Sydney?
Correct, yeah. That's right. So this is an interesting struggle because we were talking about site structure before. Let's say that we have a current client now and they have two locations. They have Melbourne and Sydney. And so when they have one site that has to cater for both of those. So what they are doing, what we're working with them on is either the title will say SEO Consulting Melbourne, Sydney to include both locations, or if we feel we have enough unique content for each site, we'll actually split that out into 2 pages, SEO Consulting Melbourne, SEO Consulting Sydney, if that makes sense. So it depends on how much unique content you have. But yeah, definitely. If you're a location-sensitive business, put the name in a natural way. Like SEO Consulting Sydney is very natural. Yeah. Good questions. Good questions. Any other questions about titles? Again, my earlier comment, Google may ignore your title if it wants to. If it doesn't like it, it may modify it. That's their prerogative. That's what they do. For the most part, they do it when titles aren't optimized properly. They will actually make it look nicer on your behalf, in a sense.
What's the difference between a pipe and a comma?
So comma is generally used to separate keywords. So if let's say I have a web page that sells 3 very closely related items, but they're not the same. So maybe, I'm just trying to think of an example off the top of my head. Yeah, like, yeah.
Business shirts.
Yeah, something. Yeah, let's say like collared t-shirts and t-shirts or something like that. Then I may put collared t-shirts, comma, t-shirts, pipe, my brand. Yeah, to cater for both of those. But this comes back to site structure. So you'd have to ask yourself the question, if I'm putting 2 or 3 items in there, should I break those out into 2 or 3 unique pages instead? Because they will be more relevant for key phrases. Using my example of t-shirts and collared t-shirts. If I broke those out, then if someone searched for collared t-shirts, my collared t-shirts page would be more likely to rank because it's more relevant for that specific key phrase. But yeah, if you want to separate keywords, use comma, but use a pipe to actually split the title up, brand and keywords, pretty much. Okay, great questions. Any other questions? Okay, good. If you need help with titles and stuff, just speak to me because it's a little bit technical. It's something that's on a site, but most of the time it's quite easy in the modern world. All right, meta descriptions. Have you all heard of meta descriptions before? Okay, right.
What I'm supposed to do about it.
So maybe it would have helped me to explain better if I started off by explaining what meta means. M-E-T-A, meta, in this context. So web pages have content, and then on top of them, they have meta information. Meta information is not usually visible on the page itself. It's kind of like additional information about the web page. The first part that we were talking about is the meta title. So I didn't put meta in there, sorry, but meta title is the title of the web page. Meta description is the description of what's on that web page. And that description has a limit of 160 characters. Now, meta keywords is another one. So let's start with meta descriptions. Meta descriptions actually have no direct impact on rankings. Google has come out and said that themselves because people spam them, so they ignore it. But it can give a great snippet to users and increase your click-through rate. So let me show you where meta descriptions show up. You see this text here? That is their meta description. So they've actually gone and typed out a meta description specifically to entice people to click through to this result. Now, a couple of caveats. Firstly, if Google doesn't like your meta description, they will ignore it. And I say that a lot. If Google doesn't like anything about your site, they will ignore it. They do that a lot. So if you've gone and typed a meta description, they may actually ignore your description if they feel it's not relevant to whatever the person is searching for. But for the most part, they will respect it and put it here. So meta descriptions, as I said, don't influence how well you rank, but they can influence how much people click through if you make them enticing. So for example, I sell leather jackets, and my unique selling point is price. I sell on price and delivery speed. So I put that in the meta description. Right, great. Well, here, they've said, discover the range of women's leather jackets from ASOS, right? Whatever, they're trying to entice us to click through. That's where you put that information in the meta description. Okay, any questions about meta descriptions? My advice from a practical point of view, if you have a website that has a lot of pages, put meta descriptions on your highest traffic pages, the top pages or the category pages. But if you have 1,000 products, I wouldn't spend too much time on those meta descriptions. If you don't have one, Google will create one itself. So it will read the text on the page and create it. If you look down at these dots, most of the time means that it pulled that text straight from the page and it generated its own meta description. So these actually all look like they were explicitly typed. This one here is a good example of one that wasn't. So this page, this Wikipedia page, didn't have a meta description, so Google went and made one for us to show us that it's a relevant page. Okay, so yeah, do it on the pages with the highest traffic, but don't stress too much for every single page to have a meta description. Okay, meta keywords. Who's heard of meta keywords? Yeah, okay. My suggestion is, aside from the 10 seconds we're going to talk about here, don't waste any of your time on these things, right? They have absolutely no meaning to Google. In fact, Google has said if you are really spammy in your keywords, they may actually negatively affect your site because spammy people tend to spam the keywords. Bing still takes consideration of meta keywords, but they have said it's very, very, very minor, and Yahoo as well, very minor. So I'd suggest, just from a practical point of view, don't waste your time on them.
So don't put a keyword in your meta description.
No, meta keywords is a different meta tag. Right. These are two separate things. Meta description is that description. Yeah. Meta keywords is another piece of meta information. Yeah, that you can define. Mm-hmm.
So when you search, what's searching?
When you do a search in Google?
Yeah. So what is it? The title or description, or what's it?
That's the $1 million question. When you do a search, Google is searching a lot of stuff. Google is searching over 200 factors of your website, but not the meta keywords. After all of this, I'm going to talk about landing page thinking. So I actually made this for you, Adrian. So I was thinking about your business when I was preparing this, and I thought, how would you engage someone who wants to learn how to speak confidently? Well, this is the first idea that came to my mind, this picture. Now you'll notice that this has the keyword learn to speak confidently. So if someone searched for that, this would be relevant to that. The reason I created this section about landing page thinking is I could spend forever talking with you guys about content. But what's most important is just understanding what a landing page is and how to build your content like landing pages. So who's heard of the term landing page before? Yeah, okay. Can any of you describe, like, how would you explain if someone came to you out of the blue and said, what is a landing page? What would you say that is?
I'd say it's a page that speaks specifically about a subject or a topic.
Yes, yeah, great. For the most part, landing pages are connected to PPC. So you have paid traffic generated somewhere, and you send it to a landing page. So this term is often used in PPC, but I'm trying to yank it into SEO a little bit, because Google really likes landing pages when they rank websites. They love pages that are built like landing pages. Now, I don't mean that your page shouldn't have navigation. A lot of landing pages don't. But if you think in this way, every web page on my site should be a landing page for a concept. If someone Googled SEO and they came to this page, what message do I want to deliver? So if someone Googled learn to speak confidently, maybe this could be the background for my page, and it would have, hey you, do you want to learn to speak confidently? It delivers a message, it grabs their attention.
Is it different to a home page?
Yeah.
Well, even your home pages should be built as a landing page for your major, whatever it is. So ours is a digital marketing agency. When someone lands on our homepage, from the moment they land, we want to engage them and get them to like our service.
So what's the difference between a landing page and a home page?
So a landing page is generally a page that's built specifically for PPC traffic to be sent to it. What I'm trying to describe is how we should think in the way that all of our web pages should be landing pages.
I'll give you an example.
You want to grab their attention and say, yes, this is the page you want to be on.
I'll give you an example. Like if you had a website or your website with a page on it which had all of your services, say 6 or 7 of them, and you had like content on each of those services, they should be separate pages.
That's right.
Separate landing pages as opposed to all on the one page.
That's right. And so what I'm going to write, there's actually a sentence here.
But the home pages don't have everything on them. Home pages just have the navigation to go to the landing page.
Well, the thing, to explain this, the thing is the home page is sort of like a landing page for your business, right? And you need to design it that when people land on your homepage, you grab their attention and you show them we're great for these reasons. And then you help them navigate to the other pages.
Yeah.
What Google does is that it treats each and every page of your website as a unique page. So not necessarily that every time you come up on search results that Google is going to only show you your home page.
Exactly.
If there's some information very relevant to, let's say, public speaking fears, Google feels there's no point taking someone to your website and expecting them to search for that particular topic. If you have a page that says, how to overcome public speaking fear, Google will straight away take you to that inner page.
Yes.
So your home page is always the most powerful page, but then depending upon, everyone is time poor. So Google wants to make sure that if I go to the internet, search for something specific, they want me to reach the exact page where the information is. Okay. It's about user experience. So I don't want to go to your website and search for information, then navigate through.
Yeah.
So that's what a landing
Yeah.
page is.
Yeah.
So
A good description.
From a visual and content point of view, could I have my "Do you want to learn to speak confidently" on the majority of the screen, and then have the content below that, so they scroll down underneath?
Yeah. So when you build just generally pages, there's actually a website that does this really well. Well, I hope, depending on the resolution of the screen. Right, so this screen's resolution is too low, so this page is actually not looking very good. But you can see that what it should have is, if the resolution is a bit higher, you'd probably see that underneath the fold. Oh, sorry, still above the fold. So that shows you should still scroll down.
Yes.
Yeah. But
that's the landing visual.
yeah. So what they've done is, this is a great example. This is their homepage, and they've built it like a landing page. What is the message they're trying to communicate to us? Inbound marketing is complicated. Moz's software makes it easy. Bam. There's a very simple, clear, concise message that they've delivered to us, and they've landed. So the way I try to explain landing pages, just like Sam explained, thanks for clarifying that. Google can send traffic to any page on your website that they feel is relevant. So every time someone lands on this page or this page, it's almost as if they're out of the blue. So pretend, how many of you have physical stores, like where you sell your product? Wow, we're all modern, right? So imagine you have a physical store and you sell books. And imagine you have a star salesman in your store. The moment someone walks through the door, imagine they had a word written on their head, like looking for books about how to do research, because that's like the keyword, right? You have a little bit of a clue about that based on which page they land on. So imagine they walked into your store and you know they're looking for research books. What message are you going to deliver to them? How are you going to engage them and get them to love your service? That's what I mean by designing every page like a landing page. So the moment someone searches for digital agency and they land on our homepage, we want to yank them out of whatever mind space they are and deliver a beautiful, coherent message about how we're the best. And whenever someone searches for SEO agency and they land on our SEO page, we want to yank them and say, hey, this is why we're great, right?
I think the best way to look at it is identify which are the most important pages on your website. And then say, okay, on these pages, within 5 seconds, can I tell people who you are, why they should consider you, and what's the next step? Because even in that Moz page, the direction was purely saying, go and take a trial. So you're saying that this is what we do. What we want you to do is take a trial. So you're making the process much more easier later.
Yeah. So here's just a little bit of what I just explained. People can enter your site from any angle when it comes to Google SEO with little or no context. They may know nothing about you. So just like I said, imagine people walking into your shop. What are you going to say to them that delivers to them? And the message you want to send is, I am relevant and I'm high quality. Because going back to the heart of SEO, that's what Google tends to rank higher. So actually I have just one brief example. This is a very contested space, car hire. And it's difficult to rank highly for a keyword like car hire Sydney. This is a client that we have. Again, forgive this screen, it has very low resolution. But they used to have 3 or 4 web pages. The one was Car Hire Sydney Airport. The other was Car Hire Sydney Price Comparison. The other was Car Hire Sydney Specials, and then something else. So 3 or 4 pages, but they're a little bit too close in terms of their intent. They're very similar. So what we did is we took all of those and we consolidated them into one landing page that is Car Hire Sydney. It addresses this need. And this is the page. So we took the content of all of those other pages and we consolidated it into this page. This has their prices. This has the price comparison, which was from one of the other pages, information about the airport, and so on. Once we consolidated those, this page started to rank a lot better in Google search. Because what Google was seeing is, I'm a little bit confused. There are 4 or 5 pages, but they're all kind of short. They're not really selling you. We consolidated them into a beautiful landing page that explains exactly about their service, and then it started to rank them better. That's kind of what I mean by every page a landing page. Your website should actually be a coherent set of landing pages that map from more generic to more specific as you go down. And that's how the best e-commerce stores are structured like that. So let's say I sell all sorts of clothes. This is a landing page for someone with the intent of buying clothes. This is a landing page for someone with the intent of buying men's clothes. This is a landing page for men's shorts, right? Each of them is a landing page along the journey, and someone lands on there and says, I want this, and you've delivered a great message. Okay? Does that all make sense? Yeah. Good. So Google loves this, by the way. I really can't stress this enough. Google actually ranks pages like that better. Google ranks pages that are longer better because it thinks that they serve user intent better. So if you've built a good page that has a decent amount of text, not wasted text just because you want to rank, but substantial text, it will rank it better. Okay. That's pretty much what I wanted to deliver to everyone today.